dear topic to us all, and I think it's very important that we all think about it in a different way and see it from different perspective. I am Rania Reda, steering committee member for Egypt in the Digital Arabia Network and founder and CEO of Augmania.com. I represent here, I'll be your moderating tonight, and we have here also Basant Helmi, co-chair of Digital Arabia Network. Hi, Basant. And we have Lara Ordo also from project manager from Dan. Hi, Lara. Thank you for the effort. We also have Rasha, who will be the sign translator with us tonight. Thank you, Rasha. And we have our awesome panel here of speakers. So let me quickly thank them and introduce them, and then we'll get to know more and more about each and every one of them before I give the floor to Basant. Dr. Ahmed Darwish, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Dr. Ahmed was the Vice Minister of Housing in Egypt. He plays so many roles, wearing so many hats, but he always say, I'm an urban planner by heart. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm assuming there's a lot of students from your university watching their professor here tonight. So looking forward to it. We have also Dr. Sarah. Dr. Sarah is Egyptian, now in the States, joining us from the East Coast. So thank you for taking the time, Dr. Sarah. And she is an architect by heart. Dr. Sarah is an eyewitness on the, Dubai transformation, let's say. The smart city, what went wrong, what went good, and how it did, how they thought about it. We will hear a lot about the lessons and the transformation. We have also Eloïse. Thank you, Eloïse, for joining us tonight from Paris. And Eloïse is a tech, very high tech. She also plays so many roles. Eloïse is very interested in the smart cities, open source platforms that help people engage. The civic participation, she always says that this is something that she's like devoting a lot of time to do. She's also took place or part in the Barcelona project. Barcelona is one of the top smart cities all over the world. So we'll hear about her experience and what we can do also to do in our beloved Egypt. Mahmoud, least but not last. So, last but not least. So thank you for taking the time tonight as well. Mahmoud was one of the, people that I met, and we actually inspired to have this session due to his ideas and all the youth ideas that will be joining us tonight. The question was, we are the next generation. We are the coming future of Egypt. The new cities and smart cities in Egypt were built for us and our, children and the following generations to come. So should we participate? Should we have a say? Should we be, active in a sense of saying what we need? So thank you, Mahmoud, for sharing your thoughts. It's a safe platform here, safe place. So we're going to be sharing ideas, criticizing ourselves and others. The objective is to get a find path to be more good citizens, more positive citizens, and have a better place to be. Basant, I leave the floor to you to introduce yourself and Dan.
مساء الخير. Hi everyone. أهلا بيكم للندوة بتاعتنا Egypt's Next Generation Cities New and Smart. أنا هتكلم شوية عربي، هتكلم شوية إنجليزي، وهبطأ شوية علشان رشا الساين لانجويج ترانسليتور عانت شوية منك يا رانيا تتكلمي بسرعة. My name is Basant Helmi. I'm the co-chair of Digital Arabia Network. Digital Arabia Network was launched in the end of 2017. We were a group of people from Morocco to Jordan who believed in the role of technology in making our life a better place. And we wanted to bring the discussion around digital transformation into the MENA region with a holistic approach. We are gathering politicians, the business community, women entrepreneurs, young people. We have so many stakeholders whom we invite to discuss the impact of digital transformation on our lives in the MENA region. We have 5 spheres we are working on. business and the future of work, arts and culture, online media and journalism, civic participation, and this is very, very important to the topic of tonight. Did anyone ask us how we would like to live, how our city should look like, and much more? And I'm really happy to see among the participants experts in this topic, and we have our steering committee member in Morocco, Tarek, who is joining us as well, and he's expert on smart cities, and he's supporting Dan in presenting this topic to the MENA region and putting it on the political and economic agenda. So I'm really happy if we can, and looking forward to a very live discussion tonight. And thank you everyone for joining, and thank you everyone for giving us your time and your know-how, and hope we will benefit from this discussion, and we'll continue it inshallah also in other countries. So thank you, Rania, for the moderation, and yalla, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Basant. Rasha, sorry again for speaking so fast. بس مش عارفة. يعني I promise I'm gonna do better. Now I would like to have our speakers introduce themselves, just a brief 2 minutes. Say whatever you feel, whatever you want. How do you describe yourself, and what's your area of expertise? I know it's ladies first, but maybe let's start with Dr. Ahmed.
Dr. Ahmed, we can't hear you, unfortunately. Still not. Okay, in the worst case, what you could do is to log out and log in again, and then you will be asked again that the site can access your microphone and stuff. Because from here it's very hard to see what is the problem. Okay, Dr. Ahmed is joining again. Let's hope we will have a sign from him.
Hello.
Yes. Hello, Dr. Darwish. Now we can hear you.
Great.
But
Sorry
we still can't see you, so.
Yeah. Is it working now?
Yes, perfect. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. What I was saying is that we should start with the ladies, and I'll be the last one to introduce myself.
That's why your mic didn't work. Yeah. Okay. I'll get back to you. Okay.
Yeah,
so, sure. Dr. Sarah, shall we start with you?
Absolutely. Seems like the technology agrees on that as well. First, thanks for having me. I'm Sarah Masry, architect by heart, as Rania described me. I graduated in architectural engineering at Alexandria University in 1996. Since then, I've been doing a lot of research, academic research on architecture until I graduated from Virginia Tech with my PhD degree in architecture and design research. That was 2007. I'm not that old, but I also continued teaching after I left the US in the United Arab Emirates between 2008 and 2018. Between architecture, interior architecture, building systems, I was also forever interested in human-technology interaction and the aspects that it brings to the architectural field. I stopped eventually 2 years ago. I decided not to teach anymore. Left to the US, discovering some entrepreneurial opportunities in here, enjoying it, but still the architect. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. Eloïse, should you go second?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So thank you, Rania, for moderating, and Bassett for introducing this talk, and the Digital Arabia Network for organizing that kind of opportunity to have discussions on such interesting topics that are smart cities, the next generation of cities, etc. Introducing myself, I am not Egyptian, so I will not pretend to be an expert in Egypt, that's for sure. I graduated, from McGill University in Canada in political science and economics a while back. And I also did some research at UCL on political science and political philosophy and human rights. And right after that, I specialized in the sector of impact technology through my experience in a living lab. So in a lab that would reunite pluridisciplinary actors to find the best solutions to resolve some society's problem with environment, lack of democracy, and many other issues, social issues that could be solved with technology. Maybe that's where I actually realized that technology was not a panacea for everything. And I started working at Open Source Politics, which is a civic tech company. So a company that specializes in the technologies that could help to improve citizen engagement. And with that, using free software called Decidim, that can actually, help improve citizen engagement, organize citizen engagement in the level, regional level, national level, international level. So I'll discuss more about that. So I started focusing on open data and those software that could help with promoting democratic principles in societies, government transparency, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'll discuss more of that, and I'm happy to discuss with all of you. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Eloïse. Thank you.
No problem.
Ahmed.
Yeah.
Would you please?
Okay. Thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me now? Okay. So it's a pleasure to be here among all the panelists and the audience. I'm Ahmed Darwish, as Rania introduced me. I used to work as the Vice Minister for Housing for Urban Renewal and Informal Settlements. This was 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. I stayed in this post for 2.5 years. I was responsible for slum upgrading and urban renewal all over Egypt. I actually graduated from Ain Shams University in 1994. I Bachelor of Science in Urban Planning. Then I studied GIS and remote sensing. I like IT and information technology, and I believe it would be a very helpful tool in everyday's life. Now it was everyday's life. Then I went to the UK. I did my PhD in computer science in again GIS and for extracting urban information from satellite images. I went to Germany and worked there for a couple of years. Then we returned back to Egypt almost 17 years now. I've been working for a couple of universities. I worked for the American University in Cairo. I worked for the government. I worked in for the Ministry of Housing in different places, and currently I teach at the Mr. International University and at the American University. I mainly teach GIS and urban planning and housing courses.
Thank you, Ahmed, so much. Mahmoud, before we hear your self-introduction, I would like to share with you all a public chat. You will find the link with the questions, because I would like to know, where are you joining us today from? So here's the link. You just click on it. That's for all our audience. Type where you are now, where is your city, and we will see the results in a minute. Mahmoud?
Sure. Hello, thank you, Rania and Dan, for the invitation. It's definitely a pleasure to be among the panelists. A little brief about myself. I studied computer engineering at the German University in Cairo. And then upon graduation, I was part of the Hull Prize Foundation. I was actually leading the on-campus program, which is basically the pitch competitions that run in the different public and private universities in Egypt. And then later I joined the Greek campus. I was the ecosystem opportunity manager. I was actually responsible for actualizing the expansion projects in the GCC countries and also across Egypt. I was very lucky to be actually working on our branch in New Asyut, the branch of the Greek campus back then. And now I'm leading the business development efforts for universities of Canada, and also a little brief of Canada, because it might be confusing for some of our audience today. Universities of Canada is actually in the new capital in Egypt, and we're basically a host campus or a physical platform where we host Canadian universities, branch campuses actually, using our space, using our facilities, and curriculums, staff, and programming, and also certifications come from the Canadian universities. Now we have only one university, and we have plans for more universities in the future, inshallah. And yes, that's it.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Thank you. So now let's see where our audience tonight are coming from and joining. I'm gonna share my screen so that we see it all. Lara? Yes, thank you. Gonna share my screen here. Here we go. So, do you see it? I see people coming from Munich, Finland, Berlin, Casablanca, Egypt, specifically Cairo. 10 participants so far. We need to learn more. Okay. More from Egypt, more from Cairo. Good. All right. So, thank you for the introduction. I think because we lost like a few minutes in the technical setup, so let's start with the presentation directly. Louise, would you give us your presentation, what you are preparing for us tonight?
Sure. I'll just wait for Lara to, yeah, there you go. Great, thank you. I hope everyone hears me well. Rasha, I'm gonna try to speak very slowly. So, okay, so as I told you in my introduction, I started working for civic technologies and how we can include more citizens in the dialects to design our future cities, basically. I worked for Open Source Politics as a freelance consultant, and I do that in cities. So I treat those questions in cities in France at the hyper-local level, at the local level, at the national level, and now at the European level, and also in cities across the world. So it's a pretty good view of what of the challenges we have in the cities today and in the design of future cities. And basically what I specialize in, is how we can approach those new cities and how we can include as many actors as possible. So when I talk about actors, I mean citizens, but I also mean academia, public government, and like the government officials, and every type of stakeholder that has an actual insight and legitimate insight in the discussion of the future cities. So that's for the little introduction. I'm just going to check this goes well. Okay, so a little maybe discussion on just the definition of smart city. I'm going to give you a macro approach, and I think the rest of the panelists will give you a really well set of case studies. So basically, for the past few years, when we talk about smart cities or when you talk about next generation cities, it's a subject that symbolizes a lot of things, but mainly futuristic urban landscapes, hyperconnectivity, sensors, big data, AI, and machine learning, and so on. It is a list of boxes of technologies that need to kind of be checked to be considered a smart city. And there's a tendency that all of those discussions and all of this enthusiasm for new technology actually falls into techno-solutionism and kind of blind public expenses, because we're thinking about we want to be competitive, we want to have the latest innovation, we want to have the latest technology, and so we fall into these discussions where we don't actually ask ourselves why we want to use those technologies. So my question here is, are next generation of cities really all about this? The concept itself of smart city is pretty lost in its vagueness. Everyone has its own definition. Every country, every city has its own definition of smart city. And it's kind of a marketed imaginary. So it's kind of complicated to find its own definition of smartness. Here are the definition we have from our French National Commission of Information Technology and Liberties is a smart city, or smartness, is about improving the quality of life of city dwellers by making the city more adaptive and efficient using new technologies that are based on an ecosystem of objects and services. So I'm just going to slide to the next slide. What is the problem with this definition? It is a good definition, but it actually puts technology as a means to an end. It actually puts it as an end in and of itself and not a means to an end. Technology is a way to achieve a goal. It's a way to reach, to find solutions, to challenge a societal problem, and it's not an end in and of itself. So the question I have here is, does smartness come exclusively from these new technologies, and what would that mean? Or does smartness come from the way we process the information stemming from our local knowledge, ecosystem, services, and data from those technologies? And a little sentence here, technology does not hold the monopoly on innovation. So yeah, some sentences as well. So when we talk about smartness, we should look into our local ecosystem. We should look into the academia we have in all the cities in Egypt. We should have, and I'm talking about Egypt, but again, I'm not an expert of Egypt, but I'm just saying what usually happens, and I'll give you the case study of Barcelona later on. So it should be about growing from past experiences. It's learning from ongoing feedback, and when I say feedback, it is citizen feedback, but it's also feedback from local NGOs that know more about the city's context than any people from outside the country. And it's also about responding in the most collective and frugal way to a city's challenges and citizens' direct needs. When I talk about collective and frugal way, I'm talking about how you can design new services and new products in a collective way. So by doing some co-design, doing some workshops with, again, the city's stakeholders. And I'm also, when I talk about frugality, I mean testing those new products and services in a very small way, and then escalate it to city level or nation level, once we actually have tested those new services and products. with citizens themselves or with the city's ecosystem. So some of these challenges, the city challenges, require a technological solution, but others don't. And what I mean by that is that there are innovation can also be about reinventing services that already existed, rethinking them by like putting citizen insight and asking like, why is this service not working? Basically, what has gone wrong with the service? What has gone wrong with this product? So again, smartness should be about citizen and human-centered design. And what I feel like is an important statement is that this next generation of cities can only be imagined by engaging local ecosystems in collective discussions. So how do we organize citizen engagement is maybe the question you're mostly interested about. And who can instigate citizen participation? Is it the citizens? Is it the public government? So is it grassroots? Is it top-down? Is it like, what is the dynamic of who can instigate citizen participation? Okay, next slide. So I'll just give you a little, overview of Barcelona's case study. It is Barcelona, that is not a city in Egypt, but it is a good example of how it is like government officials who arrived in power in 2016. So the new mayor in 2016, Ada Colau, arrived as a mayor and wanted to rethink completely the city's digital strategy. And that means finding some local experts to co-design the city's digital strategy. So I'm just going to go quickly. This is Barcelona's digital strategy. It's the main 7 points. I can actually put the link if you're interested in it in the chat. Let's see. There you go. So if you're interested in more information about the Barcelona's digital strategy, that's I put the link in the chat, but I'll just go quickly through it because the main thing I want to discuss, I don't know what happened there. The main thing I want to discuss is the discussion of citizen engagement, but here's the overall digital strategy. The main thing you have to maybe understand from Barcelona's digital strategy is that it was when Ada Colau arrived as a mayor and suggested co-design the strategy with some local experts and citizens. It became kind of a radical digital strategy because it was so much based on open principles. And when I say open principles, I mean open source technology, open source data, open standards. It was all very open, and no one knew really like what the impact of all of this openness meant, and what that means for a city, and what that actually meant afterwards is that opening more data, opening more technology. So when I'm talking about opening technology, I'm thinking about publishing and documenting the source code at the basis of the technologies. All of that allowed for more collaboration between organizations, from local communities that had more access to information from the public government, to actual public administration that could, through open standards, work together with other local public administration. And that allowed also for more transparency and more accessibility of the information that was provided. So that meant more collaboration between organizations, and also an equality in the access to information to citizens. So that's for the digital strategy itself. So again, the question was, how do you organize citizen participation, and who can instigate citizen engagement? So the story was, so Decidim was the platform that was created by the city of Barcelona to receive feedback from citizens in multiple ways. It is also now used here in Europe at the level, again, from hyperlocal to national levels, and for many different projects led by local NGOs, international NGOs, public institutions. So it's basically, since it is an open source tool, it grew and now is governed by more than 150 institutions. And basically, how they use those institutions use Decidim to collect citizen feedback and work towards deepening and transforming participatory democracy through the implementation of this tool. And basically, how it's done, it is a platform that is very modular, so it really can adapt to local context, and that's maybe the main important point is that if we ask ourselves the question, how does a tool help organize citizen engagement? It doesn't. Technology is not magic. It is the project behind that technology, the project behind that, that needs to adapt to the local context through the activation of different methods of participation, different technologies that you want to use for contribution analysis, etc. And also, and very importantly, a city, if they want to organize citizen engagement in the design of that future city, they need to activate some local partnerships and resources like communication, like outreach mechanisms to reach the citizens, to actually make the most unreachable citizens participate in this participatory process, because that's the goal. It's not talking to the main elite citizens that actually now have discussions with, to partake in those discussions. The goal is really to reach the most unreachable citizens. So again, coming back to the slide, how to engage citizens. So you have different types of ways you can actually, we use Decidim. So there are classics like voting, so you can do online voting. You can also, do call to proposals. So citizens will come onto the platform and, suggest their proposals. And there's also what's important with the tools like that you use. And that's why I think the most important question here is how do we become critical towards the technologies we used. Here, the technology that we use, Decidim, actually allows for more offline participation than online participation. It's used to connect, also multiply the methods of participation. So for example, if a city wants to organize a series of workshops on the future of that city, then those workshops can be documented onto the platform. And that's done through different features. And also those features are on open source. So if citizens want to see what's behind the technology, they can. So there's also crowd law. You can also see the results of the consultations. And that's really important for transparency and trust. If you want to trust the local NGO that actually instigated that consultation, then you can actually see the results of that consultation. And then participatory budgeting, and that's basically how we use, how Barcelona used and how we used in Europe that platform. So basically Barcelona, the project they had is that they co-built the municipal action plan with more than 10,000 citizens, and it allowed for many proposals to emerge, a lot of meetings around the city that got organized. And at the end of that, it was also possible for citizens to access and follow the progress of the municipality during the mandate in a readable and transparent way. So if you go on the platform right now, and I'll also send you a link, it's actually, you can actually see the progress of each project that was suggested by the citizens. So the idea of transparency is really important to instigate trust as well. So my conclusions, I don't know if I'm in the time, but that's my take and that's my point of view. So we can discuss that during the presentation, of course. We should get away from a preconceived vision of smart city. You should define what you mean by your next generation of city, and that's why we're here, basically. We should also get away from a blind expenditure of money. and the race for the latest innovation, and instead get closer to a model of co-construction of public services with citizens and local ecosystem. I'll add a little bit of experimentation, first on small scale, of analysis based on key impact indicators established with citizens, and again, from iteration to scaling up that service. I have some examples of platforms I can discuss as well later. Also, the French Citizen Climate Assembly that just took place, the participatory budgeting here in France in some cities, some participatory processes in the biggest metropoles here, e-petition platform for the French Senate, and then Helsinki. I saw someone from Finland, maybe you know this, Jim, and Geneva, etc. So yeah, thank you very much. There we go.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. That was, super informative. And, when you were on the slide of how to engage citizens, I was looking at the 6 bullets that you had there, and I was thinking, how can we localize this experience and, have it applied on the Egyptian, I think there's a lot of challenges. And then I remember when you said that, you have to define your own type of smart city. It's not one size fits all. It's not a city that anybody from any nationality should live in and be it a livable and happy, city to stay. So I think there's a lot to be learned from the Barcelona experience and how we can take what can be deployed in Egypt and what cannot. But I think that maybe the most important point that you mentioned, that technology here is an enabler. It's not having the infrastructure, it's not having the fiber optics, the interconnectivity, it's not having this, and we say, hey, we have a smart city. The technology is enabling the people to achieve their goals. So if the goal is to live in a smart city, we have to define the smart city first. We have to know what we want to do with our smart city, and then we have to think how we can use or deploy technology to achieve that. Thank you so much, Eloïse. It was super informative. I have a couple of questions for you here.
Thank you.
So if you'd like to take them. One question says, was a strategy for educating public on how to engage in the process through the platform needed?
So if we're talking about public means citizens, yeah, it's more about, there is a part where you have to educate, maybe I don't like that word, but like, help citizens with that kind of contribution platform. I think so many times I actually sat down with some citizens and help them, publish a proposal, publish an idea, partake in the discussions, etc. So there is a part of our, my job, that is, talking to citizens and telling them also why it is really important for them to contribute on a platform, even though it's a platform, even though it's a website. It is also a process. It's a project in which they want to, in which they should partake, because at the end of it, for example, if we're talking about here in France, we had a public consultation on the environment, on the climate change, and even though some citizens weren't feeling comfortable with contributing online because they weren't comfortable with technology at all. So I'm thinking about, the elderly, but I'm thinking also about people that haven't had an education based on technology. And those people, you have to tell, you actually have to tell them that if they want to contribute, then they can also write the idea down on a paper and I'll post it myself. The idea is for them to be part of the discussion. So the platform is also very easy. So I'm talking about the CIDIM, but most of them are pretty easy and look like a website. And I also answer Felicita's question at the same time. There's because it also links to inclusion, and our platform can be multilingual. We have actually a platform in Algeria that is in Arabic, well, in Algerian, but but it is multilingual because, as I told you, like it's a community of 150 institutions all over the world. So we have to be multilingual, otherwise no one understands what other people do. So yeah, our goal is really to include the most citizens through education, but also through other types of methods.
Cool. Meanwhile, I added a question here because your presentation made me wonder, are we happy with where we live? Do we really feel that we need a smart city? So there's a question on AHA slides, and I added the link to the public chat. It says, are you happy with your city? Please continue answering. And until you take maybe Dr. Ahmed's question, what history of civic engagement did the city have prior to dissident?
So I guess you mean Barcelona. And the city of Barcelona actually had a good network of NGOs who that organized like local participation. It was very like bottom up. And then, as I mentioned, when Ada Colau arrived as a mayor, it kind of officialized those consultation methods. So it was kind of city approved, and that got participation really like exploded. A lot of NGOs had a lot more sub-benches as well to have this consultations, etc. So it really expanded at the moment where Ada Colau arrived in governance in 2016.
So you consider him the driver, the lead for change there?
The government?
Mm-hmm. The governor?
That's a good question. It's complicated when so decidim, when it is instigated, when it is applied, like the government is the one who installs decidim and like organizes that contributions. Yes, because at the end of the day, it's a public consultation. But on the question of who can instigate citizen engagement, local NGOs can have can make a lot of pressure towards government if they unite enough and organize enough citizen engagement. And I remember in Amman, one of the steering committees of Digital Arabia Network from Lebanon asked me if we could use Decidim as a whistleblower platform. And I thought it was a very interesting question because we thought about using Decidim as only bottom-up platforms, and it is possible. It's just that, again, the main thing for platforms like that, if it is local NGOs that actually have the organization of those platforms, they have to organize mobilization, and that takes resources, and that takes time, and that takes activism, just like today with NGOs. Sorry.
Yeah, awesome. Before we go to the next question, let's see how our audience are happy with where they live now. Let me share my screen for the AHA slides. All right. So we have here 14% of our audience are very much happy with where they live. Oh, 25%, that's good. And then we have 50% are happy, but they think it needs more, while 25% think they're not happy at all, 33%.
That's actually good. Yeah.
I can tell where are they coming from.
You can see where they're coming from?
No, I don't see, but I can tell. All right. But I mean, having like almost 50% saying that we're happy with where we live, but it needs more, that's good.
It is good,
right?
Yeah.
All right.
It means that there's some, motivation to be part of city projects.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I think we answered all the questions here. Did we skip anything? Yeah, Basant was asking about the fund.
So Barcelona got funded by the EU as well, and also got the budget from the new from the mayorship, like the fact that the fact that she became mayor, she got the budget from the city. So it's local and EU.
Okay. Okay, that's great.
And it's also, parenthesis, it got funded by the EU because it was an open source technology, because it contributed to the open source movement.
Yeah, okay, cool. So technology is just a mean, it's not the end by itself.
Yes.
Smartness is something that we have to define for ourselves, creating our own kind of city that we need to live. We have to design that. And since we have to design that, so we have to contribute, we have to engage, we have to say it out loud, we have to be active citizens more and more. It's the role of NGOs more to rally that, to bring people together, you know, put some pressure on the government, on even other inactive citizens to share more and be more active. Thank you so much, Eloïse, for that. And now we're taking you on a trip from Barcelona to Cairo and switching to the Egyptian, you know, experience. Dr. Ahmed, I know it's very challenging for you today. You're not representing the government, so it's okay. And please hear us all, because we might have some, I would say, criticism to ourselves before the government. So bear with us. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Rania. Now we're moving away from the technology and the interesting part to urban planning. And it's not an interesting topic, especially when we talk about a huge country like Egypt. Let me start with a, okay, sorry for that. Let me start with a quick background about Egypt. Then I'll speak briefly about some urban indicators and urban problems in Egypt, and then the government interventions throughout the past 5 or 10 years. The background: Egypt is quite a big country, as I said, with 102 million people, almost 103. We're ranked the 14th all over the world regarding population. We represent 1.31 of the world population now. Population density is 1 of 3 persons per square kilometer. Total area almost 1 million square kilometer. That's interesting. The percentage of urban is 43%, and the median age of people is 24.6. So we're a young country. Surprisingly, this is an interesting graph. If you can see here, this is the 1950. We were just 20 million. Now, 2010, we were 80 million. 2020, we're 100 million. So 5-folds in just 70 years, which is quite a huge difference, from rising from 20 million citizens to 100 million citizens in just 70 years. And this definitely puts a lot of pressure on the urban environment and the services needed and the infrastructure. A lot of investment needs to be done to cover the needs of just the needs for 80 million new persons. Yeah. If we look at this graph, all my presentations about graphs here. Between 1950 again here and 2050, it's expected, or even 2020, we were a rural country until expected by 2040 will be an urban country. More people will live in urban cities or urban environment than those who live in rural areas. Now it stands at around 46%, 43% urban. By 2040, it will be even. After 2040, we'll be living in an urban country more than in a rural country. This has never been the case in Egypt throughout the history. We have a history of more than 7,000 years. We have always been a rural country, depending on agriculture. So this shift towards urban environment, again, it puts a lot of pressure on the people, the infrastructure, the availability of job opportunities, a lot of differences between rural and the urban environment. Again, this is a quick example of the population density. If we look at Egypt, similar to most of European countries, especially the Western European countries, and different China and India, and a couple of or let's say 10 African countries, we're more than the average with regard to the population density. So we're more dense than the average worldwide. So if we talk about the cities in Egypt, let's take Cairo as an example. Again, between 1950 and expected by 2035, in 1950, When we talk about Cairo here, we talk about Greater Cairo metropolitan area, which is Cairo, Giza, and Qayyubayya governorates, the three governorates that they form together a huge urban area. In 1950, less than almost 3 million people used to live in Greater Cairo metropolitan area. Now we have almost 20 million, 16 or 17 million live in this area. So it's very dense and populated area. Expected or projected by 2035, in just 15 years' time, will be more than 25 or almost 30 million inhabitants live in this area. Look at this map. It shows the density of the capital compared to the densities of the other capitals worldwide. As you can see, Cairo, capitals of Egypt, in a dark blue, which is very much dense with almost between 20 and million inhabitants, as we just mentioned. Again, this puts a lot of pressure on the urban environment. If we talk about population density by city between 2011 and 2014, we see that Dhaka in Bangladesh is the most dense city with 44,000 inhabitants or persons per kilometer square. If we go to Cairo, it's ranked number 5, ranked 5th with 8,600 persons per kilometer square, which is still huge density, large, very big density. Another part of the urban environment that's always important in Egypt, slums in Egypt, slum areas. Actually, the government estimates that 40% of urban areas in Egypt is unplanned or a slum area. 40%, it's a huge number, but this is the fact. When we talk about slum areas in Egypt, we have different categories. Well, 2 categories mainly. The first is unplanned areas, and the second is what we call unsafe areas. Areas that represent a threat to the people living there. For example, they live in shacks, they live in path of a flash flood, they live over a hill with a chance of landslides that can kill them. Okay, and we have 351 what we call unsafe areas. Almost 1 million people live there, with 250,000 families living in those slum areas. They are spread all over Egypt with 25 governorates. We have 28 governorates, and we have informal markets. And with unplanned areas, we have 156,000 faddans with unplanned areas. So this is a quick overview of the urban environment in Egypt. This is the number of slum households in Egypt between 1990 and 2014. The number is decreasing, thanks for the activities or the efforts of the government in that direction. Okay. One slide. This is examples of what we call unsafe areas. This is how people live over an area called Manshayyat Nasser in Greater Cairo, outskirts of Cairo. People used to live like that. Now it's upgraded and they were moved to a more safe place. I like this picture a lot because it says a lot about the urban environment in Egypt. It's the huge contradiction between high-rise building and just across the street, the people live in a slum area like that. So this gives a really contradiction between the different urban environments in Egypt and how different people live in different situations or different cases. So this is how I summarize the situation in Egypt. We have high birth rate, we have rapid urbanization process, we have high urban density, we have a mega city or a mega metropolitan area with more than 20 million inhabitants soon. We have a slum areas problem, and we have what I like to call spatial injustice. And spatial injustice is basically, if you look at the city like Cairo, even if we don't like the infrastructure and the facilities there, they are much far better than the infrastructure and facilities available in a small city in Upper Egypt. And this is why people move from small cities to bigger cities and then to Greater Cairo, searching for better job opportunities, better services, better infrastructure, and so on. So this is why we have large number of slum areas. Throughout the last 5 or 6 years, the government interventions first, let me start with the Egyptian Constitution. For the first time, the Constitution of 2014, Article 78, it clearly states or tackles the issue of urban environment in a different way. This is the first time to have in our Constitution an article dedicated to urban environment. It basically states or mentions what the state should be doing. First, the right state should be responsible for to ensure that citizens have the right to adequate, safe, and healthy housing in a manner which preserves human dignity and achieves social justice. It also mentions that there should be a national housing plan in a comprehensive urban planning environment to address the problem of unplanned slum areas. So this is Article 78. As a result, the government decided to have threefold intervention: new cities, social housing program or project, and slum upgrading project. The housing project, the social housing project, sorry, it's one of the biggest housing projects worldwide. It's done with the support of the World Bank. We call it the Inclusive Housing Finance Program. It's a 5-year program started between 2015 and it should end the first phase this year, 2020. It should help 3.6 million Egyptians to have a better opportunity or better access to the housing market. It should support transparency and accountability, well-located housing units. This is what the government is doing now. It's building social, I think, 1 million new units for the Egyptians, for the low-income Egyptians to use and to make them affordable for them. Last couple of years, we had almost 500,000 beneficiaries from this program. If we talk about gender, 50,000 were female, 70% of the beneficiaries were aged under 40, 61 of the beneficiaries were families with children. In a nutshell, it covered so many aspects of the people, it answered the problem of so many people who couldn't find an affordable housing unit. If we talk about the slum upgrading project, this is one example of the many slum upgrading projects in Egypt in the past, as I said, in the past 5 years. This is the Asmarat project. It's a huge project in Greater Cairo. It's as you see, the housing units and all the facilities needed for the people who will move in here. You've seen the pictures of the unsafe areas that I showed a couple of slides ago. Those people were moved to this place to live, and they have all the facilities they needed to live in a reasonable housing environment. Other examples in other cities, the people used to live at the picture in here, and now they moved to those places. The third intervention, pillar of intervention, was about new cities. And sorry, apologies for the bad quality of the image or the map. But this is the best I could find. We're talking about 20 new cities. It's expected to accommodate around 30 million inhabitants. The new cities are spread all over Egypt. We have the first city in the new administrative capital. It's just outside the skirts of Cairo. Then we have the Alamein. It's on the north coast, just in here. It used to be a historical city, and now they're developing quite a new city. And we have cities. The green ones are the new ones. You can see they're spread all over, even Upper Egypt, starting from Aswan here to Asyut, Mania, all over Egypt, in Alexandria also, Sinai. So they are spread again all over Egypt. This is an example of residential district in the new administrative capital. Real life pictures. And we have this residential part in the Alamein city, the North Coast city. And this is part of the touristic area in Al Alamein city. So basically, I've spoken briefly about the situation in Egypt, gave a brief background about Egypt, the situation of the urban environment, the main problems, or how I see the main problems are, and the government interventions over the past 5 or 6 years. and showed a couple of examples. And the question remains, is this enough? Is it smart? Is it sustainable? I think those are all questions for discussion here. Thank you.
Well, those are very tough questions. Let me say, we have to face the reality. I mean, the first step towards a solution is to identify the problem and know what exactly it is and how big it is, and if we can really help. So, and thinking of what you shared with us, and thinking of Cairo by itself, one of the cities of Egypt, of the 28 cities of Egypt, is that huge. It's at the size of countries in Europe, right? And other places in the world. And with all the problems that it comes with all the, the more you wait to solve a problem, the more it gets complicated, and solving it maybe becomes harder. And the easiest way would be just build another new city. Okay, so we're not trying to solve this, so let's get another. I think one of the solutions maybe for the overpopulated Cairo city is to expand, is to have new cities at the borders of Cairo, so that can be a natural expansion for the city, which is really happening. And I think there took a lot of people moved there, and that means it's a success criteria for the theory of expansion. But was the expansion enough? Like just building a new city, like extending what we have now? Or should things have been done differently this time, since we have an opportunity to start building a new city? That's a question. And I think also looking at the slum areas in Egypt, I truly understand that it's going to be very hard to think of a smart, advanced, high-tech city without solving the real problem of the slum areas, because that gets more maybe priority. It's a pressing problem that has to be, solved first, and people have to look at it first. Maybe, in my opinion, maybe people would, think differently. But also thinking of the new cities, Dr. Ahmed. Now we have the new administrative city, what you call it, and then we have the new Alamein. And with every city, there is a new city adjacent to it as an extension to it. And what we understand, like the first thing that gets to your mind when you think of a smart city or a new city in Egypt is a compound, that gated community, the luxurious buildings, the park, the pool, the golf courts. You think of all this, and that's what maybe the media or the promotion of those new cities would promote to the people, right? This is where you live a happy life there with your kids and having all the nature and blah, blah, blah. But then there's a lot of people would also go and work and support and build and clean up and live in these cities. Workers, drivers, all kinds of those people who cannot afford to buy those luxurious compounds or townhouses in that village, but they still need to live in that smart city or new city, because this is where they're going to work. So that means that I would believe, if we're not tackling this problem, starting from building the city and taking those societies into consideration, we'll end up having another slums. So every new city, every new compound that will have just adjacent to it, behind it, another slum for the people who are the workers, who are the people who cannot afford to buy. That's my theory. I'm not, maybe I'm exaggerating, but what do you think?
Let me answer briefly and to the point. The key issue here is to be inclusive, to have an inclusive city. And what we're building in Egypt, from my point of view, is totally uninclusive cities, not inclusive cities at all. And until we solve the issue of how to engage all the citizens in our planning process, stakeholders in our planning process, we will remain building, we will continue building, or the government will continue building cities from their own point of view, from the government's point of view, and probably they don't match the market needs, the real market needs, and consequently, the issue of slum areas and informal market, informal housing will continue. So the key issue here is how to inclusive, how to have an inclusive city. Cairo, especially Greater Cairo, is totally an uninclusive city. As you've mentioned, we have so many gated communities. I think if we compared to other cities worldwide, probably will be ranked #1 with regard to gated communities. This is totally unhealthy for the urban environment, totally unhealthy for the society on the long term. So I totally agree with you.
Well, but thinking of solving the problem of a city where 20 million people live, and maybe another more 10 people commute back and forth every day for their work and coming in and out, it's a huge problem. It's not something that we can, solve overnight, but there has to be solutions. There has to be, maybe if we break down the problem into some small problems. I'm not hearing any of the initiatives around me in the tech scene in Egypt tackling this problem in building the civic tech by itself as kind of technology, as a branch, as this is kind of startups that we need to have and build, because that solves a long-term problem and gives it the sustainability that we need, is not even on the map. It's not on the mind of youth. It's not that easy thing that people are thinking, yeah, let's do this. There's a lot to be done. If there's any entrepreneurs in our audience today, if there are any people, in technology, in NGOs, social impact, whatever you call it, there is a lot to be done here. There is a lot. And I don't think that any government would come overnight, change the problem. It comes in no time. It has to be all of us together. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for giving us the real and honest picture about what we're going through and understanding the problem. We have a couple of questions here before we move to the next presentation. So, Soha, Sarah is asking first, who is the designer of these projects?
Different designers, but most of them are Egyptian firms, architecture firms. Yeah. Do you want exact names? I don't have the exact names, but they are all Egyptians. Yeah.
Okay. مش عارفة هو سؤال استفهامي ولا استنكاري, بس it's okay. And then Soha says, I read a comment before mentioning that the majority of old Cairo is basically unplanned. And we are seeing many of these areas being upgraded. How do we upgrade without destroying our history?
Well, let me tell you here that no, Old Cairo is not unplanned. Old Cairo is planned according to the standards of old times. They're planned according to the standards of the 1850s and 1820s, as Paris, as London was planned according to that time standards. And even the not so old Cairo, the 1920, 1930 part of Cairos, they are planned according to the standards there, and they were very similar to Paris, very similar to London. So no, it's not unplanned. But the second part is, the question is how to upgrade, upgrade without destroying our history. What I see is that there is no contradiction between upgrading and destroying and maintaining the history. There should not be, upgrading doesn't mean that we should destroy the history. We should build on what's there, upgrade it, and enhance the situation there. Doesn't mean or imply that we should destroy the history. Unless Soha is talking about a specific example that you would like to raise and discuss. But this, generally speaking, no, we shouldn't destroy the history to upgrade the old city.
I think maybe she's referring, we heard a couple of projects moving, moving them to Tahrir Square. So changing the way that the city used to look and moving some monuments from their original place where they're.
I have some connection problems. I'm not sure whether this is for.
I have the issue as well. We can hear you really well, Rania.
So it's Rania. رانيا احنا مش سامعينك.
think I have an issue with my audio.
It's back now.
Hello?
It's back now.
It's back now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know what, Dr. Ahmed?
You were talking about moving some monuments.
Listening to you, and then I remember. Yeah, moving some monuments. So maybe that's part of, could be considered partially destroying the history as we know, and maybe making a new history that I don't know. So, and one of the things that I usually remember is that my mother telling me that Cairo, I think that was in the 40s or 50s, was nominated as one of the top best beautiful cities worldwide.
Exactly.
And she was like, it was Cairo, Paris, and London. I think those were the three modern, clean, nice, beautiful cities. I'm not sure what happened. Okay, there's another question. Are there examples of historical buildings that has been successfully retrofitted and repurposed into live buildings? I used to visit Aberdeen in Scotland, and some of the administrative buildings and university premises were over 600 years old.
No, unfortunately not. That's a straightforward answer. Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. All right. I'll ask you another question on the AHA slides, and maybe that would help us align our thoughts here. The question says, what would you like to change the city that you're living in now? So here's the AHA slide. Let me get you. It's the same link, but let me copy it again here. Okay. And I'll be sharing my screen to see the results before we move to a different theme. Okay. You all have the link? Lara? I would like to share my screen.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll immediately put you.
Okay. Okay. So let me share the AHA slides. And here, what would you like to change? Come on, we would like to hear you. We were talking about the, civic participation. I have only one question here, or something to be changed. Governmental services to be digitally transformed, transportation system to be smarter. Those are two important topics. Islam, تغيير النظرة الدونية للمباني التاريخية. Of course. Ahmed Darwish, traffic, green areas, public spaces. Basant, in Cairo, the destruction of the old buildings, building gated communities. Yeah. Again, I think part of solving the problems is knowing exactly the size of the problem, what is really the root cause of this problem, what can be changed, and what do we want to change, and thinking if we do these changes, would that solve the problem, or do we need to do more, like dramatic changes? Yusuf said pedestrian should be friendly, so we need to have better streets, better area for pedestrians. Lara says more and safe bikeways for Berlin. Thank you, Lara. For you to know, to be happy where you live, we don't have bikeways in Egypt. Okay, Ahmed, public services, hospitals, schools, play areas for children. A great Paris that doesn't rise up prices of housing, of course, understood. Anything else? Would you like me to keep this slide and you keep adding whatever you have in mind? Maybe we visit it again later. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And all right. So, wow. We heard a lot about the smart city and the concept of building smart cities, why and how. We heard about the Barcelona experience. We heard about the Egyptian experience. I don't think we have started yet building smart cities. that could be the good part of it. Like, we started building new cities. So if we're still yet to build smart cities, that's nice. I mean, it's the right time to think how to do it, and to think, starting from the next city, we should do that the right way, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is science behind it. There's some methodologies that we have to follow, and we can have learn from other experiences and see how we can localize it in a sense. Now, Dr. Sarah, you were an eyewitness for the modernization experience in Dubai. You've seen a lot to be done, and how they thought of building this special case. It's one of the few Arab cities that people would like to live and go and stay and say, okay, here we feel that we're partly in Europe, partly, but still keep the Arabic, the Islamic part of it, but also we have the modernization, we have everything nice that we can think of in a city. Would you tell us more about this experience, and how did they go about it? What was right, what was wrong? What are the lessons learned for us? Dr. Sarah? But I think your screen maybe has frozen.
Dr. Sarah, we can't hear you at the moment. You are not muted, so we should hear you. I'm not sure what is the reason.
Okay. So maybe she needs to rejoin to activate her mic and camera again.
I think so. It worked for Dr. Ahmed, so.
Yeah. So until you reactivate your mic so that we can hear you. Mahmoud, how do you feel? You're the youngest here. You're representing the future. How do you feel?
Yes. Actually, the presentations were very insightful, especially the one about Barcelona, because I didn't know about this project at all. I tried to do some research before, but it's really inspiring in a sense. I think we ought to challenge ourselves to reach this level one day, hopefully. I'll try to keep a positive attitude. Because again, I'm the youngest, and we're supposed to carry the spark of hope with us. Actually, I also wanted to give a little status update about the new capital specifically, because one of the questions from the audience was asking, like, how is it now? How like, what does it look like? So the new capital is basically still in progress. The pace is really high. Like, the pace of progress is really high, but it's still mostly people cannot, for now, people cannot actually live there. It's not livable. What's operating are basically the universities or the Knowledge City, which is a national project to onboard branch campuses from top universities abroad. The new capital was supposed to be operating, or like the government agencies in the new capital was supposed to be operating by mid 2020, but again, because of Corona, this was delayed to mid 2021. So we're expecting the new capital to be somehow livable, so more accessible by mid 2021, but for now it's mainly desert, and yeah, I hope this answers the questions of Yusuf Abu Ali, because he asked about the new capital, and yeah, I think we don't have Dr. Sarah.
I'm not sure, Dr. Sarah, are you back? I saw her trying to leave the meeting and rejoin, so I'm not sure if she successfully back or not. I think she's gonna let us know when she's back.
Okay.
Do
Also,
you think that there is a responsibility for yourself and for the youth in general, people who are well educated, people who are ambitious, active, usually active into the ecosystem and know a lot about the technology, about the everything that we at your age didn't know. Do you think that there's a responsibility that you have to do? You have to start creating a unit, whatever you call this unit, an NGO, an initiative, whatever. But then there has to be something to be positively participating in the decision making of building new cities and say, hey, this is not what we want. This is typically what we want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, very specific. And our dreams are very, concrete, well-defined, achievable. And those are the things. And we are willing to help. We are willing to contribute. We are willing to be part of the change. Do you think there's a responsibility here that nobody's taking, claiming here?
Okay. Realistically speaking, I would say the most contributions that people my age can actually do is basically on the civic engagement end of things. So when it comes to the development of cities or the planning of cities, basically my generation is not involved at all. And so yes, I totally believe we're lacking or we're falling behind when it comes to the civic engagement momentum in Egypt or Cairo specifically. And also, if I'm going to speak for my generation, and my generation to be specific is basically Generation Z and millennials, there has been a lot has been happening lately on the political sphere, and this has been affecting our generation and also affecting our drive to try and make actual change. So most of my generation are now in a phase of I wouldn't say disappointment, but like a phase of recollecting their energy back. If this is the right words to put it in. So yes, I see there's definitely a responsibility on my generation, and it's mainly on the civic engagement side and the initiatives that we can come up with to have our voices heard, to make more information available for other people, for less privileged people, even for other generations as well. But I think the main challenge has been the changing dynamic in the political sphere lately has been draining for our generation. It's a reality. I know somehow will sound sad, but it's the reality. But like I'm really hopeful in a couple of years this will change.
Yeah, totally understood, Mahmoud. Totally understood. It's political, economical, societal impact altogether. The three of them are impacting each other in a way or another. Welcome back, Dr. Sarah. Would you unmute?
You hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Right.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that, but well, as I introduced myself earlier, I moved to Dubai in 2008, early around that year, and that's when the economic crisis started happening worldwide. And I went there for a job, raising my family, but I always joke that I'm living in a 3D architectural magazine. Architectural experimentation was all over, non-stop, changing all sorts of materials, theories of architecture that I've been studying and teaching are happening around me. And well, any architect from all around the world is able to come and experiment with something new. You need to get the Sheikh's approval. That's it. And here you go, a skyscraper here, there, everywhere. Well, let me see how I can move to the following slide. I also joked with my friends that we are older than Dubai. We are older than the city itself. Can you believe it? We are much older than what's happening around us. But that was not precisely true. Dubai was a hub for trading since the previous century. So when in 1894, the ruler just exempted foreign traders from taxes, people start coming and settling in the, I don't want to call it the city, but that hub then, the port on the Gulf, where people can settle, come with their cultures, their food, their experiences, languages, and settle there. So it's a pretty ancient settlement. Not ancient as our ancient, but it's old enough to not be our age as well. And since then, with this happening and forming the UAE from the different 7 emirates in 1972 and onwards, after the amount of oil that they discovered, the city had, the architecture was challenged, was speeding really in a scary manner and evolutioning since then. The city was growing, really growing in a speedy way that no control was done over it. Having that said, merchants and people coming to Dubai in the old times were from all over the area. So Iran, Persia, India, name it. They were just dropping here and there and coming with their culture, as I said, but also arts, and architecture being partially art. You can see all the decorative ornamentations noticeable in the city until today. And not even when it's not linked only to an Islamic city, but you can see ornaments coming from ancient civilizations, Mesopotamia, India, and so on. So this hub or this port being adaptive and digesting all of these interactions together, these pictures, which I took myself, are recent. So you can still see these impacts from different civilizations happening in the city, in the old parts of the old part of the city per se. But more importantly, that during that time, before the 60s, the main mode of transportation was walkability, no other way. So if you're not coming by boat, you leave that and you just walk. With the harsh conditions of the climate in that area, separating the urban development or the architectural elements from the climate was something that cannot be done. So walkability, shading, and how the city itself was being weaved together in narrow alleys, which they call in Arabic sikka. And I think this is a repetitive term in many cities, not only in this area, in the Gulf area, was something that you evidently see and need as the city was growing. Not only the development itself of the urban developments of the area, but also in the need of adapting the architecture to the climate, to how people use the city itself, and how people interacted with that. So you can see elements like here, starting with wind towers, called in that area barajil, but in our old cities in the Middle East, you can see different iterations of a climatic moderator like this. Shading, entrances or gateways to the souk, to the residential community itself, using local materials. You can also note the human scale, how the buildings themselves start sizing themselves to the human, the user, as they walk along the streets of the city. I get to question myself, wasn't that smart enough? Wasn't that interactive enough? Wasn't that adaptive to what people needed? So pre-globalization, every community actually built the city bottom up, just adapting it to what they need. You can see lots of bullet points here, consuming less energy, recycling, combating social decay, getting people together, minimizing vehicular interaction into the city, sharing responsibility of the space itself. due to social and economic political changes, at some point this just changed. And with the globalization also, we can see that the city is being built nowadays, as we've been discussing, in Egypt and other, maybe other cities being built up or designed top, bottom. And in the process, I can claim that it lost its natural smartness, the idea of a functioning area that hosts people in a proper way. Well, I'm a researcher, so people start talking about how Arab cities starting resisting in different ways. Projects of resistance started happening because the city didn't anymore reflect or meet what people or inhabitants needed. And because of the industry and the need of speed at the same time. So there is a pressure coming from this side, the pressure coming from this side. We need to speed with building cities. We need to do that really quickly. The population is growing. And on the other side, people are still missing what they had in their old cities. And with the challenging dominance of the Western models coming with the globalization, eventually people who worked on designing and building cities starting to react. So the need for these resisting projects had to be observable, reproducible, so I can build more of that item or that element per se more. There's a high demand. We need to be quicker, faster. We need to cope with the global changes in architecture and construction. So there is also that pressure at that point. When we talk to resistance and what applies and the most that apply to Dubai itself, I put them in 4 different phases. From when the oil started showing up and we have the means to build whatever we want, let's go modern, let's build big things, let's scream out, let's bring architects from all over the world and they can recreate their work in our desert. And then in 2012, the governors then said, well, I think we can see some potential in preservation, going back to our heritage. So a heritagization, if I may call it that, started showing up when we preserve and conserve everything as it is, especially when Dubai started putting a bid for the UNESCO to declare the Dubai Creek as a conserved area. Moving on, synthesis or hybridization started showing up. So, well, we have these really big, tall, huge, oversized, air-conditioned buildings, but we miss some cut and paste, ornamented images, motifs, colors, patterns that we had from our past. So let's just paste that on the buildings that we got and build something which looks native, which looks local, but it acts international. And this stayed for a while. Lately, another movement, and specifically after the crisis, started coming up when there is a return, a go back to environmentalization or the bioclimatic architecture, or going back to our senses when it comes to what I just described as the smart city of the past, walkability, scale, shade, and how about trying to get that back into the city, but in a high-tech mode. And this is what happened. I have 2 notes here before I proceed. One thing that Dubai is like Egypt in a way, which I can claim is the political atmosphere. Even this is called sheikdom, this is called a republic, but how this environment is being ruled, it's still the same. It's a vision from one person or one entity, and it's been dictated over the public. So they were lucky enough to have someone who is visionary and taking the lead. even the companies, the construction companies, which are taking over in that sense, are owned by the government. So they are semi-private, semi-governmental companies. And the vision itself is absolutely owned by one person. So the other note, though, given the much younger age of the city, these lessons or this movement is again at high speed. I cannot even start to think that that all of these modes. I lost my screen just a second. I'm sorry. All of these phases, let's say, all of these 4 phases that we're looking at here happened now within my age or lifetime. Like we're talking less than 50 years, we've seen all of this happen. And this is good in a way, because learning from the past, learning from the errors, or feeding in the market with what we're learning and possibilities of change is something that we aspire for. So really quickly, just to see how things moved, as I explained earlier, just a visual presentation here. So 1960s, we've got money. We are bringing everybody from all abroad, and we're modernizing our desert. We're building high and big and screamy, speedy, heavy. We are building at top of our lungs with the latest innovation possible in the market. So one of the most striking and still standing towers which happened at that area, and you can see the surroundings here. This is the old hub, or the old trading hub of Dubai, which existed hundreds of years ago. Earlier, I mean, this is a tower which just shocked the layout of the area at that point of time. And then it kept growing until the 90s, the architecture of spectacle, everything is shiny, tall, glass, steel, all sorts of new materials, just fighting for a high skyscraper, which they are still advertising until today. And believe it or not, this is just a limited stretch of a street. If you see advertising for Dubai, don't believe that the entire city is like that. The trend was successful because basically they wanted to grab attention. They wanted to have people pointing at them and say, look at that. They are succeeding, they are building, they are doing everything which is high and big and standing out like that. That was the intention then. We are a growing country, we're succeeding, come and do business with us or do whatever with us. Meanwhile, the old city stopped being an active contributor. It's still there, sitting there, but it's dying, not dying, it's still that trading hub. It's full of labor and seekers of less costly items, not going to the mall. We need to buy cheaper, so we go there. But it's not contributing to the city itself. And then, as I said, in 2012, the UAE started bidding 6 sites to the UNESCO World Heritage to get the UNESCO World Heritage status. And for Dubai, or the Dubai Creek, succeeded at that point in getting that status. And since then, they started looking at this area of the old city as a potential for more investment, for more tourist attraction and tourism to be brought in the city. So that was strict conservation. Nothing should change. We are keeping everything. We are spending more money on conserving the city itself, or the old part of the city itself. After a while, the new city was still being built, and they're still spending money on the big and the sparkling and the air-conditioned, and all of a sudden they said, you know what, we need that touch of our heritage, we need that touch of our Orient mode, let's say. So things started to be polished, nothing genuine. So if you bear this building, for example, or the following from how it looks, or the ornaments, or how it is being carved here and there, is just another building which is not performing per se at the smart or the old smart level of functioning. They really quickly got over it, specifically after the 2008 crisis, when they said, you know what, this is consuming too much of our investment. We really need to revisit how this used to work. And again, this is too soon of a lesson to be learned, which amazes me, because at that point, when you start moving around the city and you can feel that this very high skyline is going down, the experience itself of walking and down the streets of Dubai, even in the hot weather, was changing in a qualitative manner, not only the polished manner that they were doing around the 90s, but they started learning. And what I did at that point is just I went down and started looking at what they had in the old city and what have been reintroduced as the architecture of the millennium. Well, two things here. When we talk about smartness, it's not only the final product. It's not necessarily the most wired, not necessarily the most one with the fastest internet or connection hubs or charging portals but it's also the process itself. One of the parts of the architecture processes is the design. And unfortunately, we're not at the phase of smartly designing as a community itself, like the case of Barcelona, for example, which was presented earlier. But I would say also in the phase of construction. So when we start building something which is mirroring or reflecting or learning from the city of the past, here, I would say a smart method of construction, right, like modular construction, like prefabricated items, like using the right interpretation and use of modern materials and contemporary materials, not necessarily the locally available ones, is a smart process. So if we look here, we can see the reintroduction of the shaded pedestrian ways, like the sickles. We can also see the return of some shading elements again above the entrances or above the walkways themselves. But we can also witness new smart processes of construction. So if not many of you are architectural experts, but most of the elements that we are looking at here are pre-produced in factories and just moved to the location and constructed without the need of messing up the site for a long time. Quick, smart, cost-effective, and also introducing or exploring new materials and how we can reintroduce them to the architecture of today. So we don't really have to be stuck with everything which is that old. We just need to learn how they are performing and adapting to our needs and to the climate and to the surroundings, the context itself, in order to find the right new ones and utilize them. So we can see here layered facades, which are providing protection to the actual building skin so heat doesn't walk in. They have been used as interplays, art. They have been cooling walls as well, probably at some points where cold water from the AC is cooling the skin of the building. And everything or most of the things that we are looking at are modular, not taking too much time and labor on site. If you remember the previous slides, you can identify the gateways to the souks and market. Souk is a market in Arabic. The residential communities. So that came back into a new model. The Baraji, the air coolers, at some point specifically in that project, Box Park, it was used to host the AC machines and the mechanical items to cool the stretch of buildings surrounding it. Again, patterns which are borrowed from our heritage, or giving room for local and international artists to add to the experience itself. Playful kind of new materials to provide shading over the facades. Well, in conclusion, we can learn really quickly. We can learn really quickly. We can adapt really quickly. One of the things that astonishes me is that Egypt's new cities are following closely the footsteps of Dubai, but unfortunately with a big lag. We're talking about the 90s of Dubai. So we can learn. It's not necessarily wired. It's not necessarily the highest speeds, although that's needed right now. But smart starts with the design process. All cities are examples that we own. We don't have to borrow that. Construction is part of the process itself. The final product can also be part of a smart product which meets our needs more importantly than just being wired and advertised as such. I'll skip a couple of slides and I'll just leave you with a quotation here that it doesn't create any conflict, that we keep our traditions and learn from them and go towards the future in a speedy way as well. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Thank you for taking us in this journey and looking into the Dubai experience. I have a couple of questions here. I know we're getting towards the end of our session tonight, but there's a question that's saying, living for almost a decade in UAE, do you see Dubai is becoming a good example to follow? I think you implicitly answered that kind of question.
Well, I would see they are still going towards the revision of what they have been doing before the latest movements, like before 2008. They are going down the right track. They are revisiting what they have done. And it is about learning from where people ended, rather than going through the entire journey from the very start and just saying, hey, we are doing the great things that Dubai or another city did well. They did mistakes. And if we're not learning, then we're not learning.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Mahmoud, if you have the option now to live in Barcelona, in Dubai, or to create your own version of Cairo, what would you do?
Okay. I would love actually to create my own version of Cairo. And technically speaking, now I work as a new extension of Cairo, which is the new capital. So I hope I contribute a little bit to have a better version of Cairo in the new capital. And actually, after hearing Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Sarah, I think there are a couple of points that are very major to people in my generation, and when it comes to planning of those two cities, we usually neglect. The first one is, how are we designing those cities to be more environmentally friendly? So Generation Z and millennials are very concerned with pollution and the environment and conserving the environment, and how we're adopting sustainable practices every day, and how we're changing our reality to be more sustainable and more friendly to the environment. So what are we doing to have more sustainable transportation system, an efficient transportation system. I think this is something that's usually neglected. What are the policies that we're putting in place? And I think this is an area where people my age can also contribute through through digital channels, through physical channels, whatsoever. But having policies in place that can help build those cities in a way that will be environmentally friendly and will limit carbon emission, will make it more sustainable is definitely key. And and also, how are we designing those cities to close the social gap? Because also Dr. Ahmed talked about the gated communities, and mainly real estate developers are the main players when it comes to designing those new cities. How are we making like more social housing offerings for all people from different social classes and circles? So this is also a question, and also a point that I think is usually neglected, and if no one from my generation didn't speak about it, it will never be brought up, is how are we actually designing the new cities to accommodate the new challenges of our generation when it comes to mental health issues and mental challenges. Because lots of research has been showing lately that Generation Z and millennials are like facing the most troubles when it comes to mental illnesses, mental challenges, and this is something that should be tackled from an urban development point of view. So do we have more open spaces? Do we have more green areas when doing those new cities, or is just concrete? So this is also, I think, a pivotal point when it comes to designing our new cities. And when I spoke before about our responsibility as a generation, maybe I sounded a little bit pessimistic. So, and also Eloïse asked about what is the role of NGOs. So I actually wanted to highlight an NGO that I'm familiar with. A couple of my friends were part of it. It's called Mashrou' al-Saada, which is in English is the Project of Happiness. What they did is basically they renovated old slums of Cairo and even in Aswan. There were artists, architects, and even volunteers that didn't have any creative or urban planning background. And they were successful to renovate a couple of neighborhoods. I'm not really sure how active they are currently, but this is a good example to actually follow. And also, I think because we have Eloïse on board now, I think it's time to start a discussion about how can we learn from other experiences, because Eloïse and people in our generation and other parts of the world have success stories that we can learn from. I think it's about time that we start a conversation and a constant channel of discussion with similar success stories.
Yeah.
I'll
this
talk
is
to you about that. No problem. We can start collaborating.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the activities that we usually do at DAN, and this is why we started this session. We had a very big event a couple of months ago called Rakameya, where we had 500 attendees from the MENA region and also from Europe, and exchanging ideas and thoughts and learning about best practices and lessons learned from each person or each city's experiment. There were a lot of topics that we discussed, not only smart cities, and this is our session tonight is an extension to what we have discussed in Rakameya, and we intend to continue discussing because it's a very hot topic and it's a very important. I would say smart cities is an umbrella that has a lot of work to be done underneath it in terms of social engagement, in terms of politics. There's a lot of things to be done under this, and it touches our daily life in different aspects. And it really struck me tonight that we're talking about Dubai, with a lot of expats there, different backgrounds, different cultures, different nationalities. And then we're talking also about Barcelona. Dubai is a small city, a tiny city compared to Cairo. Barcelona is an even more tiny city compared to smaller cities than Cairo. And Barcelona also is a touristic city, so with a lot of tourists from different cultures, from different backgrounds, and they maintain to do it like kind of in its own way, every city in its own way. Like Dubai had their Minister of Happiness, they had their lots of apps where citizens can engage with the government, send their opinions, send their complaints, getting usually in touch, and they were competing on how quick and fast should the governmental service be provided at any of their offices. So you should go in and out in like few minutes, finish your transaction, do the thing. And they were always thinking it's not about the architecture only to be a smart city, it's also about the services, the way that you live in this city, in a sense. Speaking of Cairo, back to that, we have a lot of challenges on almost every dimension that you can think of. So Dr. Ahmed, if you are now in control of saying, okay, I have the magic wand and I'm able to let things happen, what would you like from us, from the citizens, from the youth, from the experts in that field, to contribute to? What would be the starting point?
For me, the starting point is to answer Louise's question, how to define smart in Cairo or in Egypt. For me, being a smart city in Egypt is to have an inclusive city. So taking this challenge, so that my request from the IT guys or the IT industry, to find out how to engage as much people, as persons and citizens as possible in such a dialogue for developing the cities, our cities, the existing cities, and our new cities too.
Perfect. If we are now, Lakdan is sponsoring an initiative to do such a thing, what do you think the first step that we should do? What is the starting point again?
Starting point is to have a real working model. By a real working model, I mean a model that's suitable for the Egyptian context, taking into consideration all aspects, all dimensions, all concerns, even the government concern. We cannot cooperate. We do not cooperate in vacuum. We do not operate in vacuum. We operate within special concerns, whether we like them or not. But these are the concerns that we have to consider. So we have to design a working model that take into consideration all the concerns of all parties and get as much people involved as possible. So the first thing to do is to design this model, test it on a small scale, probably with the partnership of in partnership with the government, and then take it to the next level and engage more and more people as we go.
Perfect.
So the first thing is to find a working model, a real working model.
Yeah. And to you, Eloïse, you think you agree this would be our starting point, a working model, or do you have anything else in mind to start with?
I was actually writing in the chat. I was recommending a book by a woman called Beth Simon-Novick called "Smart Citizens, Smarter States," and it's really, I have it here. It's actually really interesting because it provides an explanation on how to articulate both the feedback from citizens and how you can engage citizens, and government feedback as well, in the sense that if you want to think about smart city, as Dr. Ahmed said, if you want to start thinking about a smart city, yes, including citizens is key, but working how you can process the information from the citizen and use it for as a leverage for the government, it's also key. And how you can process that information, because if you do a first project where you engage citizens, but you don't know what the result is going to be, those citizens are going to lose trust, and it's going to be a one-shot exercise. And you need basically to set up the context for the citizen participation to actually result in something. And I know this is the biggest part of the work. That's why I think the most important thing is, as you said, Dr. Ahmed, is to look into the Egyptian context, look into past experiences where pressure was done by local NGOs and citizen, and it worked. How did it work? How we can use ongoing feedback, how we can organize, because it is an organization to organize citizen engagement. And that's how you can truly, in Barcelona, yes, there was it was instigated by the government, but the results, what the citizen asked, it only got heard because it was an organized voice. It wasn't like dispersed voices. So yeah, I'm rambling, but it's really important. I'll just the name of the book.
Yeah. Thank you, Eloise. So, Dr. Sarah, I believe in baby steps, like taking a small step and then capitalizing on it towards a successful, path to the results. And that's why I was asking what would be the first step that we should focus on right now. And I think maybe forming a community of people, like lobbying with the people who are with good interest in that field would be a first thing. Do you think that's something that architects in Egypt would be interested to lobby towards smart cities?
Well, I definitely know the answer is yes, if they are allowed to. that's the main thing. I cannot stop thinking about how people specifically who are interested in building or expanding the new cities in Egypt, and who are specialized architects and who are very well informed about the heritage and the heritage, that very rich heritage that we have in a country like Egypt, have been trying to get involved efficiently in the process. But it is a two-way process, Rania. It is about releasing a platform for people like those to get engaged and attracting them back to their interests, because they were pushed back, unfortunately, during the previous years from voicing what they think and what they need, being the specialists, unfortunately. So that is very important. I cannot even stop thinking about what Eloise stated, that the NGOs have a major part, or had a major part of the Barcelona experience in lobbying the public per se. And again, if the space is not given to people, specialists or not, it will not happen. So it's a two-way process. People, if architects are interested, yes, I know a few. I can name them if you want. I can name many, actually, who are situated in Egypt and interested and have been trying and actually did some good work with the government. But on the other side, they have to be given the space to act when it comes to that.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Sarah. So, Mahmoud, now we have the blessing of architects. We have, and I'm sure that a lot of technologists who would like also to participate. We have the business matter experts here who are willing to give the chance and give the the expertise and educate and help people through the process. I think it's about time that we also rise again and say, okay, this is, maybe we were not heard in previously, but we will never give up. There's always hope. We decided to live in this country, so it's our place, and we have to decorate it and make it beautiful as much as we can, right?
Yes, of course, I agree. And actually, there's this piece of information that I would like to share with the audience related to what you were saying, is that the Ministry of Youth is actually organizing a competition to name the new capital. I just came across this on Facebook, and they are inviting the youth to actually name the new capital. So I think this might be a very good starting step that we participate, especially the creatives in my generation, to start taking part in this initiative to actually name the city, and this can be our very first mark in shaping the city in the ways that we aspire to.
Perfect. Yeah, there'll always be a first step. Thank you so much for our panelists today. Thank you for our audience. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you for Digital Arabia Network for making this happening. And I wish to see you more soon. We will follow up with you with any updates, with any initiatives. We'll get people connected. We'll get the network growing and growing. And thank you and have a wonderful night.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you, Rania.
Thank you so much,
Bye-bye.
Rania. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you very much.